Hello and welcome to another edition of Addition. I'm your host, Addy. I'm a big tech product manager, mathematician, futurist, tech optimist, artist, and creator, and I'm here bringing you the news, the hot topics in tech, an update on the markets, some career advice, and let you know what I'm geeked out about. So before we get into today's episode, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button. If you're listening on your podcast player, go ahead and subscribe or follow, leave a 5-star review, that would be amazing. If you want to keep up with me on social media, I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Addition with Addy, as well as Twitter at AdditionPod. My personal Twitter is at Addy, and you can always anonymously email me with questions, additionpod@gmail.com. And you can subscribe to the Substack, which gives you the podcast, as well as the link to the YouTube channel, as well as all of the show notes directly into your email inbox. That is additionpod.substack.com. All right, I know it's been a week, so let's get into today's episode. So the markets. Bitcoin is at 19,364. It is down 4.18% over the past 7 days. Ethereum is at 1,637. It is up 3.74% over the past 7 days. So unclear what's going on with the crypto markets. I have no reason to explain why they've been dropping. Ethereum has the merge coming up. I did find a whole frequently asked questions package about the Ethereum merge on CoinDesk. So I have it linked into the show notes. So if you're watching on YouTube, it's in the description. If you're listening in the podcast app, it's in the podcast description. If you're in the Substack, you can read it in the show notes. So if you want to know what's going on with the Ethereum merge, what is it, what's the impact, all that information will be there. So moving on to the stock markets, the S&P 500 is up 0.63% over the past 5 days, and the NASDAQ is down 0.21% over the past 5 days, so pretty flat over the past week or so, but there has been a lot going on, and today's hot topic, I have 2 hot topics today. I have to talk about the Snap layoffs. Okay, so if you haven't heard, if you're living under a rock, Snap laid off 20% or is in the process of laying off 20% of its workforce. And Snap is the owner of Snapchat. If you're not familiar, it's the instant messenger disappearing pictures and video app that typically was popular with kids and teens, some millennials, but they are struggling right now. So let me quote from the CNBC article. I quote, Snap is laying off 20% of its workforce, which equates to over 1,000 employees, according to a report published Tuesday by The Verge. The layoffs will begin on Wednesday, the report said, and will affect certain departments, including hardware and developer products. Snap has had a difficult year, with the company's most recently missing on both revenue and earnings in the second quarter. In its Q2 investor letter on July 21st, Snap said it would not provide guidance for its current quarter and said forward-looking visibility remains incredibly challenging. Snap shares dropped more than 25% on the day it reported its second quarter earnings. The company's disappointing results kickstarted a wave of social media companies reporting poor results, citing a weak online advertising market, among other things. The social media companies blamed some of their problems on businesses cutting back on digital advertising because of the weak economy. Additionally, these companies have said that a 2021 privacy update to Apple's iOS has made it more difficult for them to track users, thus negatively impacting their online ad units, end quote. So the story of Snap is a story of a lot of big tech companies right now that are dependent on advertising. They are impacted by Apple's 2021 privacy changes, and that's the interesting and fascinating thing to me about tech. So there will always be ripple effects of decisions. So the market that we had, where the thriving ad business that we had, was based on us as consumers not necessarily caring what happened to our data. Then there was a big wave for privacy and data protection, largely led by the European Union. That has had an impact. So now our data is, more anonymized, more private. But now those companies that were profiting are struggling to, meet their same targets because they have less data on us. So that affects our wallets if we are invested in these companies. So everything is connected. Everything has an impact. So I'm going to get into this more in the career segment, but just talking about how to protect yourself from a layoff, how to create your own job security. I'll get to that later. Next, I'm going to talk about Amazon and their move in their return to office policy. So if you haven't been paying attention to return to office, so a lot of companies, a lot of big companies are doing the 3 days in the office, 2 days off. So Microsoft, Google, Apple, most of those three, I believe, are doing 3 days on, meaning in the office, 2 days off. Whereas companies like Airbnb have said, you know what, we're just remote. You can work from anywhere. We are a travel company. I will link that episode where I talk about that in the show notes. Now, here comes Amazon. All right, so I quote from CNBC. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy says the company doesn't plan to order corporate employees to return to the office. Quote, "We don't have a plan to require people to come back," end quote, Jassy said on stage Wednesday at the Code Conference in Los Angeles. Quoting again, "We don't right now, but we are going to proceed adaptively as we learned," end quote. Amazon tech workers were told to work from home in early 2020 as the coronavirus spread rapidly. In October, Jassy said Amazon would leave it up to individual managers to decide how often workers would be required to come into the office, which marked a sharp reversal from its earlier goal of returning to a, in quotes, office-centric culture. Jassy said Wednesday most employees have returned to physical offices and are spending some days working from home. Certain teams tend to be at the office more often, such as hardware or creative units, while others, such as engineers, continue to work largely remotely, he added, end quote. Okay, so I talked about this last week. I am in the office 5 days a week just because, honestly, I'm tired. I don't like the mental gymnastics of figuring out, oh, am I going to come in today? Am I not going to come in today? I basically get rid of all fear that I'm being monitored for coming into the office. Not that I am, but, it just makes my life simpler just to come into the office. People who are working 3 days on, 2 days off, if they have a schedule, they stick to it. I hope they feel comfortable. People who are working remotely, they should feel confident in their decision. It's statements like this. So first, I think Amazon is trying to position itself against the other tech companies and say, hey, we're not going to tell you to come back to work. We don't really care. But they leave an opening. They say, we don't right now, but we're going to proceed adaptively as we learn, which means at any point they can say, you guys need to come back to the office. So it's basically a non-decision. And I think tech workers, and not that I speak for all tech workers, it's frustrating when it's not clear. I like to know what is expected of me. I think not specifically my current employer, but what I hear a lot is, we really want you to come back to work, but we are doing hybrid 3 days on, 2 days off. Like that to me kind of contradicts each other. So I'm glad that there's a little diversity in how tech companies are approaching return to office, but I think it's confusing people. I think it would just make life simpler if there was a hard line because, people are making decisions about like where to live, if they're going to buy a house or not, and, frankly, which company they're going to work for based on their return to office policies. But that being said, it's your career, it's your life, it's your choice. So just be prepared. Unless your company has a hard line, 100% remote policy, and the whole company is remote, prepare to return to the office. Like, it's just prepare, because we don't know what's going to happen with the markets for the remainder of the year. We don't know how long we're going to be in this tech recession. I would just prepare to go back to the office, and, you know, if you're an overachiever like me, just come in every day. I feel no guilt. I'm meeting my coworkers. I have a desk. You know, I'm not working in my home. I'm not taking up dining room space for my office. So, you know, I'm just doing what works for me. But I do think it's interesting that Amazon is positioning itself as the remote-friendly company. And I think it's going to be good for them, honestly. Okay, so let's move on to the career segment. So as you know, we're doing the first 90 days. I'm in my first 90 days at Google. I just finished my 6th week. I'm in the middle of my 7th week right now. I know I have not been as consistent with the podcast in the past few weeks, and I don't plan on continuing to be inconsistent, but I'm going to tell you why. This is crunch time right now for tech workers. You know, we are in the worst tech recession since the dot-com bubble. Maybe there's a brief one in March 2020 in COVID. There may have also been a brief one in 2011, but this is major. You know, Snap just cut 20%. Stock prices are down significantly. You know, companies are, you know, wanting to tighten up, things like that. So I have to focus on creating my job security. So you may know there is a saying at companies, last one in, first one out. So if you are the newest person on your team, if there ever was a restructure or reorganization, you're probably the person they care least about. I'm not saying that's true in my case, but that's just the best practices that I've heard from my wise counsel. So I made the decision to leave and make a career move in the middle of a major, you know, tech recession. So that decision is on me. So that decision is also on me to ensure that I am creating job security for myself. And to remind me of that, my screensaver on my computer at work, I'm going to read the quote. So the quote is, "To be successful, you must be willing to do the things today others won't do in order to have the things tomorrow others won't have." End quote. So I'm going to read that again. To be successful, you must be willing to do the things today others won't do in order to have the things tomorrow others won't have. And that's a quote from Les Brown, L-E-S Brown. He's an amazing motivational speaker. If you go on YouTube and search Les Brown, your life will be changed with all the motivational, inspirational videos that you hear from him. So something to ask as you are going through your day as a tech worker during these uncertain times: if your company had to do layoffs, why would they keep you? Like, I know tech workers like to think that we live in a meritocracy, and the people who do the best work or write the best code are safe and they're never, you know, they're never at risk. That's just not how life works. Hard decisions have to be made, and sometimes life isn't fair. And I'm not saying that's happening right now, but I'm just saying for me as a tech employee, that's how I'm mentally preparing myself. That's how I'm structuring my day. That's how I'm planning out, you know, the rest of this year, looking ahead to next year. What do I need to do to not be someone that is laid off if it were to ever happen? And so table stakes is being excellent at your job, right? Doing the best you can, asking the right questions, you know, being proactive, being friendly, agreeable, you know, someone that people want to work with, you know, like, because let's be real, the first person that someone is going to cut off the team is the person they don't like, and that the person that has a bad attitude. So even though things are depressing and scary right now, do your best to have like a good attitude, smile, you know, genuinely try to get to know your coworkers, learn from them, things like that. I've said this a million times. I'm going to say it again. Stay networking, both within your company and outside of your company. Keep your networking strong. And this does not mean showing up at networking events. This means talking to the people that sit in the cubicles next to you. This means checking in with your old coworkers and saying, hey, how are things going? This means going to your college alumni events. I have an event next weekend. We're doing a field day. It's like a whole bunch of colleges, and I'm going. I don't know these people. I don't want to play sports, but I'm showing up because I need to network, and I'm sure there's going to be someone there that I'm going to want to talk to and make a connection with. Also, go to your teams/manager social events. So we are having a virtual offsite, and of course, all these things are optional, like these, virtual happy hours, playing Among Us, engaging in the Slack chat or the Teams chat or things like that. All these things are optional. Engage, because you want people to see your name over and over and over and over again, see your face over and over and over again, especially if you're working remotely. Even someone like myself, I'm in the office 5 days a week, but most of my team is not in Atlanta. So I'm remote whether I want to or not. So engage. All right. Also, ask to meet your team. And I know right now budgets are tight, so they may not necessarily fly you out. But depending on how far it is, it may be worth the investment just to buy a ticket and pop over, I'm probably going to do that. Like, if I can't get budget to visit, my team in New York, I have reasons to go to New York. Why not pop over and see my team? Think about how much you get paid per year and think about how much a plane ticket is to your team. It's kind of worth the risk, right? And I'm not saying do this. I'm just saying it's something to think about. Remember the quote: to be successful, you must be willing to do the things today others won't do in order to have the things tomorrow others won't have. So Addition is a podcast for overachievers, for super ambitious people. So don't feel like you're failing if you're not even considering or taking my advice. But these are the things that I'm doing personally. Okay, so that's week 6 and 7. So long story short, I've been busy. I've been doing a lot to, build my connections, build my network. Also rest and recover, because that's an important part of being able to show up for work as my best self. But let's talk about what I'm geeked out about this week. I actually have 2 things this week. So first, fantasy football. Yes, Addy is in a fantasy football league. And my experience with football is my brother was a football player in high school and college, and I was a cheerleader in college, and I've dated people who were football fans. That's my extent of football experience. I don't know who the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons is right now. However, I saw that my team was doing a fantasy football league. Initially, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I mean, I just mentally ignored it. But then they said, hey, we need one more player. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sign up. Because 1, I need to connect with my team. 2, this is a social event. There's going to be a bond created through this fantasy football league that I would benefit from being the last one in. And also, why not, try something new? There's a quote, life begins at the end of your comfort zone, so why not? So if your company or your team is doing a fantasy football league and you have no interest in football whatsoever, just try it. You don't actually even need to select your own players. There's something called auto draft. So if 2 minutes go by and you haven't selected a player, you just get auto drafted. And yes, there's a buy-in, maybe like $20. I don't know how much people charge to get in their fantasy football leagues, but again, it's such a small investment for priceless connections. So I'm doing fantasy football. Let's hope I win. My team was graded a C, so off to a good start. And it was fun. It was really fun. I even got to see my manager, who's on paternity leave, because he just popped in to say hi to everyone. You know, that's awesome. Like stuff like that. Second thing that I'm geeked out about this week is I was featured on a podcast. It just came out last weekend. It's the Out on an Island podcast. It's about these two women who live in Hawaii, and they talk about the intersectionality of punk rock and feminism. So if you want to hear me talk about something besides tech, I still do talk about tech and crypto in my interview, but I talk about my history with punk rock, how I bring punk rock principles to, you know, the workplace, even though I'm technically working for the man and punk rock is anti-establishment, things like that. It's just an interesting video or podcast. So if you want to get to know a little bit more about me, check it out. The episode is titled God Save the Queen. You will understand why if you listen to it. And that is the Out on an Island podcast. And I will put that link in the show notes. Okay, so I will be back next week. I am not going to miss another week because this is addition is part of the things that I'm willing to do today to be successful that others won't do in order to have the things tomorrow that others won't have. So I'm showing up for you guys. I still am on my social media break, but so if you want to see me, you got to listen to the podcast or watch on YouTube. All right, well, have a great weekend. Stay strong. We will be okay. Bye.